So one of the old ideas for that was it's called the opening of the eyes of the soul. So, the way people think about it, or they used to think about it, was the world is making an impression by coming into the eyes. And what we see is that whole theory. But the old idea was there's a second pair of eyes. And those eyes are connected to the soul. And the soul has its own vision of the world, not its vision of how to dominate the world, a vision of how to see life that makes sense to my essence.
They are coming forth with this. There is a vision, right? And we're not hearing it from the poets and from the mystics and from the myth keepers or those other sources that where I would say what it comes down to is the heart. What you're speaking to is a heart can hear what you're saying, and the heart, there's a glow in the heart, and that glow in a heart that's like a yes, that is inspiration, right? It's coming in through that feeling. And how we lost connection to that, where people almost don't even remember what that voice of the heart really looks like, and we keep listening to false prophets who are projecting this vision for humanity that is absence of heart, right? And we still are led down with this noose around our nose rings, and those who choose not to follow that path are consistently cast onto the outside of the fringes of things.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look into history, if you see this radical thing that happened when people conceived of two things, I think. One, tabula rasa was the Latin term for a blank soul. And the idea was the soul comes into the world and it's blank. Soul being the animating force inside the person, but it's blank. And so then the family writes on the soul, and then the neighborhood writes on it, and then the culture at large writes on it. And then that accumulation of impressions from the outside is what makes the person. It's a very bad idea. The old idea in every culture I've been able to study was each soul is unique. It comes into the world gifted and aimed. And then it has to, in order to grow, it has to live inside a family that can't see typically what the nature of the child is. That's why everybody leaves home. If we could get what we needed at home, we'd all be children. But it's set up so we have to go out to find, from engaging with the world, who we are. And so one of the old ideas for that was it's called the opening of the eyes of the soul. So, the way people think about it, or they used to think about it, was the world is making an impression by coming into the eyes. And what we see is that whole theory. But the old idea was there's a second pair of eyes. And those eyes are connected to the soul. And the soul has its own vision of the world, not its vision of how to dominate the world, a vision of how to see life that makes sense to my essence. And part of life, and they used to say the cause of suffering and obstacles is not to hurt a person, but to crack open the shell of the little self and open the eyes of the soul so we can see the path that we're supposed to go on. And so that's partly how it happened. People decided the soul was empty, and therefore you can convene people in some protected place, and they can kind of abstractly do whatever they're doing and then say, here's how you're now going to live. And a lot of people will accept it because they don't even know that they're supposed to awaken from the inside, and then they don't need someone to tell them what to do. It doesn't mean the troubles are over. It just means we begin to suffer in the right direction. And then we have to learn what's real and what's not. And I want to add one other thing about these prophets of the future. The word prophecy doesn't mean to see or predict the future. The prophet is someone standing in the river of time so deeply that they can see all the way back as well as forward. A prophet is someone to whom the past is speaking before the future is seen. And so another thing about the modern world is besides erasing the uniqueness of the individual soul, there's always these attempts to erase history. And then there's the pretension that the ancient people were not developed and the modern people are. I'm not sure if that's working out very well. You know, some of that ancient knowledge is what's missing. And one of the reasons to slow down the speed of the modern world is to let old knowledge catch up to us. And so my understanding of prophecy is when a person can get so deep in their own life that they can stand in the river of life and the chaos of change, and they can see back as well as forward. The old proverb was, you can only go as far forward as you lean back. And so most of these futurists and the people doing the planning have no idea about the depth of the soul, about the continuance of the river of life, and how we're all connected to that. And it seems scary, but at some level, it's going to be a lot more reassuring when enough people start to realize that we are ensouled beings and we're not here to take over or dominate, but we are here to be agents of healing and creation.